Before we can go fully into head-to-toe the 2025 NFL Draft, we need to learn from history and most recent history, the 2024 Draft, and we've got rankings. Who are the best, who are the worst rookie classes from the 2024 NFL Draft, and what can we learn from that as we move forward into 2025 on today's Peacock and Williamson?
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love and appreciate all the everydayers out there. If you swing through YouTube and you're an everydayer, you're already subscribed, just hit that thumbs up so we know you're here just to say hi. Let us know you stopped by. And if you're new to the program, helps us out tremendously if you hit subscribe. So subscribe up so you can hang out with us. And we're talking NFL every single day here. Off-season, season, draft season, postseason. We'll be here for you. So subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts and get your questions in for tomorrow's mailbag as well. You can drop a comment on YouTube or hit us up on Twitter at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. We're looking at last year's rookie class, and NFL.com has them ranked, and we'll talk about maybe how we might rank them differently. But I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned, and you can't just go full steam ahead without learning from history, right? And it was a phenomenal draft for some teams. And if we start at the top, I think the Washington Commanders, there's tons of lessons to learn here, not only how impactful it can be to hit on a franchise quarterback. Not every team has the opportunity in every draft to hit on a talented franchise quarterback like the Commanders did with Jayden Daniels. But we also know, Matt, the development is not linear in the NFL, especially as it pertains to quarterbacks. And I'm not going to fight anybody that says the Commanders didn't have the best draft in the NFL, because I think they did. I would take their class over any other class from the 2024 NFL draft. But man, I look at this draft class, and it was a big draft class. They might be better going forward because
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
I mean, Jayden Daniels was obviously awesome. And even if he takes a step back or maybe plateaus from what we saw from him as a rookie, or, teams start to find out, okay, we're going to attack him this way and this way now that we have an entire off season to put the tape on and learn what his strengths and weaknesses are. And we're going to play against Jayden Daniels this way. And we're making his life more difficult in year 2 than it was in year 1. I look at the rest of the Washington Commanders draft, and I look at Ben Sinnott. He played in all 17 games as a second rounder, only got 2 starts, but he had a veteran guy in front of him. And tight ends, there's a lot to learn in the NFL as a tight end. You're an offensive lineman and a wide receiver in one. You've got to learn a lot. And I think he's a really talented player. I thought he was a phenomenal draft pick, number 53 overall. He's a guy, and tight ends don't peak as rookies in most cases. There's the occasional blip on the radar, and you get a Brock Bowers, who's awesome from day one. But that's not at all how things usually go for tight ends in the NFL. So he might be a really good player for them. Who knows, year 2, year 3, when he becomes the guy at tight end. And one of my favorite players in the draft that I think they stole in the second round, even earlier at 36 overall, Johnny Newton, defensive tackle. He had foot surgery in the pre-draft process, and he didn't have training camp. He didn't have OTAs. And once he was healthy and ready to go mid-season, he was just plopped in the lineup, and it was like, go. I mean, nobody has more to gain from a real offseason than Johnny Newton from a practice perspective, getting yourself right. He couldn't work out. He had this foot surgery. And it could be night and day what kind of a player he might be. A game wrecker, a defensive tackle, and we didn't get a chance to see that. It wasn't awesome for him as a rookie, but he had no offseason to work on being an NFL player.
Couldn't agree more. Like, his tape was screaming first round, all day long. Now, a couple things I want to preface, and before we get into this too, like, it always bothers me when Mel Kiper puts his grades out the day after the draft, and all the teams that had multiple first round picks get A's, and the team that doesn't pick the third round gets a D. some of it's how well you played the cards you were dealt. And
Yeah.
Washington had the second pick in the draft, 3 second-rounders, 2/3. Like, you better have a good draft. You know, I mean, to be negative if you didn't. You know, you're trading Sweat and Young, you know, your defensive ends for these picks. And to your point, they're nailing them. I mean, so this is really promising. You know, new front office did a great job. Obviously, the quarterback speaks for himself. But maybe Luke McCaffrey gets a more of a role this year. Sinnott is a perfect example. Brandon Coleman in the 3rd round. Is he a guard? Is he a tackle? Well, I think he showed that he can be a tackle. And if you get a 3rd round starting tackle for the next 5+ years or whatever, that's phenomenal. You know, Sainstril is one of my favorite players in this draft.
Already a hit there. Yeah.
Already a hit. Yeah, no doubt. But we also need to remember this is a pretty unique draft class that we're reviewing. I mean, everyone remembers 6 quarterbacks in the first 12, but there were tackles galore, offensive tackles, unlike this upcoming class that are first rounders all day long. There was stud receivers. You know, do you want Harrison? Do you want Neighbors? You know, Adunze's number 3. Like, that's rare. And we didn't see a defensive player in the first half of the draft. I mean, so this is a really unique class. And I think there's a lot to glean from looking at these, you know, what they did after year 1.
No doubt. That's the Washington Commanders, a class that could get better, but at the same time, we've seen sophomore slumps for quarterbacks too. So you might come into the next year and think, oh man, the rest of their draft actually looks better than I thought. And Jayden Daniels had some struggles and has to fight through some things, like CJ Stroud. I take CJ Stroud all day long as my quarterback. But it wasn't like, okay, he did this as a rookie and then did this as a second-year player. It was like, okay, there's, you know, it's not easy in the NFL. You're not just going to keep getting better and better and better automatically. So a lot of work to still be done for a lot of these classes. But it just goes to show you, too, like, we've got to come back at year 3 and look at these because it could look a lot different.
Yep, 100%. And, again, one of my biggest takeaways looking this thing over is really a big picture thing is we all love when our team – you know, has a good draft, we think, you know, the day after the draft, leading up to mini camp, blah, blah, blah. But if you really look at this article, you don't get as much production out of rookies, you know, Washington aside, than you might think. You know, like, oh, we'll have an awesome rookie class. And even the best rookie classes, yeah, they impact your team. And I am a huge draft and develop guy. Give me every pick I possibly can. But sometimes it's going to take a little while. You know, I mean, you don't get instant production from rookies, you know.
Yeah, and obviously the number 2 pick in the draft, you expect to play early and play well. But even their second rounders, I mentioned Newton was injured coming into the year, and Ben Sinnott didn't even play that much. He was a backup player, and those guys were, you know, those are top 50 players we're talking about as well. So even guys that you draft high that you think are going to be really good players in the NFL, they might be more backup rotational players as rookies.
Yeah, 100%. And
that's with guys playing more now than ever before.
Right. You know, come in the league a little more developed and right.
I think you talked about this with the Steelers where they had like all these Hall of Famers. You draft a first round player, that guy might not see the field for 3 years.
Right. How do I get on the field against these guys? Right.
The number 2 class, according to NFL.com, was the Los Angeles Rams. And you talked about not a lot of defensive players going early. Once they went, there were some pretty good players out there. Jared Verse in round 1, Braden Fiske in round 2. Both these guys were phenomenal as rookies. And I think when I look at the Rams class, the thing I learned more than anything else is when you're evaluating defensive linemen, if you're telling me, okay, hey, we're going to draft this defensive lineman really early, I'm like, okay, motor better be one of the first words that comes out of your mouth when you give me the scouting report for this guy, because it's the most important thing when it comes to NFL defensive linemen. Just give me 4 animals up front and you can throw the combine out of it.
And these two have that like crazy, you know. I mean, so we obviously had the offensive rookie of the year. Now we have the defensive rookie of the year. And over the course of 2 drafts, not that they'll ever replace Aaron Donald, but they rebuild an entire defensive line. And Cameron Kitchens in the 3rd round, it looks like he's a contributor as well. But that's kind of my point. Like, if this is the second best class, yeah, you got 2, I don't even know if I'm going to call them studs, but really good players, defensive linemen. You know, I'm not saying Verse is bad or Fiske is bad, but I'm also not going to say Verse is Myles Garrett either. You know what I mean? I mean, he's a really good player.
Can I just add with Fiske? Like we tend to look at the high end. We're like, oh, lots of sacks, pass rusher, awesome. He wasn't for everyone, and I think he's a better fit for this odd front, kind of playing a little 5 tech, and then you let him rush the passer on third downs. He's not an amazing run defender, and he wasn't last year. There were times the Rams had their big problem on defense wasn't that they weren't pretty good at getting after the quarterback on third downs. They had some trouble stopping the run, and that's not Braden Fiske's strength either. So let's not pretend he's the next Aaron Donald. But it is pretty amazing to watch the Rams defensive line get better after losing the best defensive lineman of his generation. So that's pretty phenomenal what the Rams were able to do. And there's other guys the Rams drafted the year before. This wasn't a 1-year rebuild either. So great job by the Rams adding a lot of young talent on their defensive line over multiple drafts in a row.
Yeah, and even like Bo Limmer in round 6 played a lot because of injury, but at least you got to see Jordan Whittington might be Cooper Kupp's replacement. So some of this is still to come, even in the later rounds too. But my point, though, is just if that's the second best draft class from last year, based on just rookie production, just don't expect your draft class to come in and just transform your team. It's hard.
Yeah, you want an amazing draft class? Have one guy that starts all the games and another guy start half the games.
Yeah, that's a great start after round 1. Yeah, exactly.
Next, we're going to look at the rest of the top 5 or so classes in the NFL draft from last year, best rookie classes, and then maybe some lessons learned from the bottom of the list as well next. This episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by TurboTax and Intuit TurboTax. And look, taxes used to be waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back at all. There was a lot of like, well, what is going on with my taxes? And I don't know what's happening, but you're waiting, you're wondering, you're worrying some more. Now Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who could do your taxes as soon as today. It's never been easier to get your taxes done than with Intuit TurboTax. An expert gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day, and an expert who will find every deduction possible, file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy, all so you can get the most back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. All right, we're getting into the rest of the top 5. According to, this is in our ranking, so get mad at NFL.com. I don't have a problem with what I'm seeing so far. And to be honest with you, I think there's some competition here in Los Angeles for who had the best rookie class. Fiske and Verse are awesome, but round 3 running back Blake Corum, I don't know if he's amazing. They did get some depth pieces, the Los Angeles Rams did, but man, you might say, hey, Joe Alt and Ladd McConkey 1-2. I'll take that over Verse and Braden Fiske. Ladd McConkey was their entire offense just about. That's rare to see a rookie second-round wide receiver come in and put up the production that Ladd McConkey did, the number 34 overall pick. And, I don't think Jim Harbaugh wants any takebacks when he took Joe Alt, offensive tackle, over Malik Neighbors at pick number 5.
Yeah, and nothing against Verse or Fiske. And we know D linemen are super important, but offensive tackles that look like 12-year starters and perennial Pro Bowlers don't grow on trees. And that's a heck of a nice start. And like you said, McConkey's clearly their best receiver. And I like to look at some of these depth guys too. I mean, Tarheeb still the corner, they love him. I mean, they look at him as a long-term starter. You get a starting corner in the 5th round, now you're cooking. You're really building something here.
Both the 5th round DBs played a lot, Still and Cam Hart as well. And some of that's necessity too. So I expected more from Kamani Vidal, the 6th round running back.
Yeah, I had him in all my dynasty leagues. And
that might be just a Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh doesn't like to play his rookies that much either. That's why I was kind of surprised with Ladd McConkey, but clearly he was just a talent issue, I think, at receiver for the Los Angeles Chargers.
And I also think Junior Colson's story is not written yet either. Maybe he's impacts things going forward. And this isn't, from what I understand, these ranks are just what you did as a rookie, not like how excited we are about them going forward.
Projecting them.
Yeah.
I love what the Las Vegas Raiders did. They didn't get a quarterback. All those quarterbacks went before him. I don't think they expected that. But they probably also didn't expect Brock Bowers to be there for him at 13 because they expected him to go earlier and a quarterback potentially to be there. Brock Bowers, though, ended up being awesome. I mean, he was a phenomenal player. If it wasn't for the quarterback that went crazy and got offensive rookie of the year, probably would have been Brock Bowers. I mean, he was an all-pro guy as a rookie. And just looked exactly like the scouting report, exactly like the college player transitioning to the NFL. And as we mentioned earlier, that's not easy to do for a tight end. And then came back in round 2 and got a starting interior offensive lineman. And I don't know if long-term he'll be a guard or a center for the Raiders, but Jackson Power Johnson kind of fell into their lap at 44. People are going to look back and be like, yeah, how did he get into round 2?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, most years, I think Bauer's performance is good enough to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. I mean, it was amazing. It was historic. And you mentioned Powers Johnson, but they also found another starter in DJ Glaze at right tackle, too. I mean, he was a project coming out of Maryland that got thrust into action earlier than he should have. And looks like he swam, sink or swim. It looked like he was going to be a keeper. So you get 2 starting O linemen and a massive difference maker skill guy. That's a heck of a start,
Number 5, according to NFL.com, for best rookie classes, best draft classes from the 2024 NFL draft is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Graham Barton at number 20.
Might be higher on them than that. This is a good group.
This is a good group, but man, a first-round center is usually not how you build the best class. But you know what helps is when you draft potentially a star running back in round 4. And Bucky Irving was amazing for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He only had 3 starts last year.
I saw that too. I'm like, that can't be true. I mean, maybe White started the game, but Irving was definitely the guy that played the most.
Yeah. So that's the strength of the class is those 2 picks. The first rounder in Graham Barton, who's the same butt kicker in the NFL as a center as he was as a tackle when he played college football. And obviously you got Bucky Irving there in the 4th round, who's a huge hit. And some interesting players. Jalen McMillan played a lot, and he's probably going to play a lot more in the future, too, because I think Godwin's on his way out.
Yeah, and Tyke Smith's another one. I think the 3rd round was a successful situation for them. I don't know if McMillan's quite good enough to let Godwin go, but he's enough that you could consider it and add one more piece. I mean, he was a success story for sure. And Braswell's really their only early pick that didn't live up to things yet.
I will say that I'd rather, of those Washington receivers, I'd rather take McMillan pick 92 late in round 3 than where Polk went in round 2.
Was rough.
Yeah,
we can get the Patriots. As early as they picked, it was not a good class for them.
Rounding out the top 10 classes, we don't have to get too in-depth with these. I want to look at the bottom of the class, but if you have anything you want to add on these, number 6, the New York Giants. Malik Neighbors, number 6 overall pick there. Really like Andrew Phillips, the 3rd round nickel corner.
I think that's a very good class.
To be honest with you, I look at this class right now, and look, maybe a lot of players had a lot of starts and a lot of playing time because the rest of the roster wasn't that good. It's a lot easier when you're a bad football team to have your rookies perform more, but Neighbors is a star.
And you got 4 or 5 starters that aren't bad that would start for most teams.
Tyler Newman could be a long-term starter for you in the 2nd round of safety. Phillips is awesome in the nickel. Theo Johnson's your long-term starter at tight end. Tyrone Tracy had 12 starts at running back. And
no misses.
Running back.
Yeah, I might have these guys quite higher too. Maybe even number 2.
I would definitely take that over. I mean, a center and a running back, I would take that class over the Bucs right now, easily.
Mm-hmm. I could make an argument over the Rams and Chargers too.
Yeah. And the Raiders.
Yeah.
And then Philadelphia Eagles, another class. I mean, they just won the Super Bowl, and all 3 of their first picks made an impact in that Super Bowl, including the thing that blows me. I mean, everybody knows about Quinyon Mitchell, who probably shouldn't have fallen to pick 22. Cooper DeJean should not have fallen to pick 40 in the NFL draft. There's some questions about him as an outside corner. I mean, he fit in amazingly for that team as a nickel corner after they got their outside corner in Quinyon Mitchell. We talked about the Rams fixing their a singular position group in a draft. I mean, the Philadelphia Eagles getting a starting outside corner and getting a do-it-all player in Cooper DeJean, who can have a long career at the NFL and could probably play safety at the end of his career right now if they wanted him to as well. Jalix Hunt was like a former safety, just long athlete.
Houston Christian.
Yeah. They didn't know what to do with this guy. And the Eagles said, well, we'll take on that project. and he got himself a sack in the Super Bowl as a rookie.
And maybe can let Sweat leave because of his development. I mean, obviously the key here, and it's been talked to death, is Mitchell and DeJean were transformed the defense. But you got two difference makers with your first two picks, and it wasn't the first pick and 33rd pick overall. I mean, they were kind of late.
And we'll see what we get with guys like Will Shipley. There was Jeremiah Trotter Jr. I saw him on the field in the Super Bowl. He just got a couple snaps, I think, late in the game. And Johnny Wilson's really interesting, just a huge wide receiver. I thought he should be an NFL tight end. He actually got a lot of run because beyond the first, two guys on the depth chart, there were some questions with that wide receiver group, and he got some play. Johnny Wilson did as a rookie, so we'll see how that goes. But I mean, just what he's shown as a 6th rounder, that's a hit.
Yeah, I mean, he's enough, no question, and so much different than the receiver they took ahead of him, and Aeneas Williams, who's like half his size. Aeneas Smith, who's like half his size.
We're going to round out the top 10 rookie classes from last year's draft and then get to the bottom of the list and lessons learned from the 2024 NFL draft next. This episode of Peacock and Williamson brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And there's a reason FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook, because you can get free money to play with. $150 in bonus bets. I'll tell you more in a moment on how to get that extra $150. And all you got to do is win your first $5 bet to get it. But when the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. There's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss opening tip-off, you can bet on that fourth quarter comeback. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. Basketball season just starts to get interesting right now as we head into draft season. By the way, NFL draft props, awesome. My favorite way to bet at FanDuel every single year. But you got the college tourney coming up. Things get real post All-Star game, post trade deadline in the NBA, and Major League Baseball is going to get going here in the spring very soon. And you never feel like you miss anything and miss your chance. You can play along no matter what. And the app is super easy to use. And when you win, you get paid instantly. And right now, FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets. And all you got to do is win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your one shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right. The number 8 draft class, according to NFL.com, is the San Francisco 49ers. And the Niners' strength here was their day 2 and a little bit of day 3 as well. They kind of shocked the world when they drafted Ricky Pearsall number 1. And I think there's more to come with Ricky Pearsall, especially with the news of the Deebo Samuel potential trade that could be coming this spring. That'll open up a starting spot for Ricky Pearsall to be that number 2 with Brandon Ayuk. And like Johnny Newton that we talked about a little bit earlier, he's a player that was injured. I mean, the dude got shot in the chest right before the season started, and he missed camp, and he missed a lot of time, and then was just kind of dropped into the team mid-season and ended up playing 11 games. But, he just had a really weird run up to his rookie season, and he's a player you should probably expect more from in the future. But the strength of the class for the 49ers was round 2, 3, 4. They got a starting outside cornerback in Renardo Green with the last pick in 2nd round out of Florida State, who looked awesome. Dominic Pooney was one of the better guards in the entire NFL, forget rookie class, in the 3rd round out of Kansas. He blew me away too. So they got 2 long-term starters there, and they pulled another starter, Malik Mustafa, who's just a big hitting, strong safety type that might replace Talanoa Hufanga long-term in the starting lineup. And while Hufanga was out, he won that job and got 12 starts as a rookie. So Green, Pooney, Mustafa is the strength of this class. It wasn't like about a big, superstar top 10 draft pick. It was that round 2, 3, and the 49ers really with an older, getting expensive roster, they really needed to hit on multiple contributors and cheap starters. And so that draft was huge for the 49ers to keep this thing going and keep a Super Bowl window open for them, even if none of those guys are stars necessarily.
Yeah, 3 quality starters. I think it's safe to say all 3 of those guys are quality starters on a rookie deal and a 1st-round pick that's kind of to be named later, to be determined. Incomplete grade on him, Yeah, that's a great class.
Baltimore Ravens comes in at number 9. They got a starting offensive tackle who had some ups and downs as offensive
tackle.
tackle.
I don't love this class.
Roger Rosengarten in the second round, and we'll see if he ends up being a guy who continues to start or if he's a problem for them, or maybe he's just like a rock solid dude, but has some athletic ability. And it's a little bit difficult to evaluate what he's going to be just based off his rookie season. By the way, he might have snagged the guy the Niners might have taken in round 2 instead. It worked out okay for the Niners. Nate Wiggins is another one. I'm not sure. Like Roger Rosengarten and Nate Wiggins, they could be really, really good players long term. They could just be okay. They could just be solid starters. But
they're the whole class. Yeah, I mean, like the first sentence here is Baltimore only had 2 rookies log more than 60 snaps on offense or defense, and it's Wiggins and Rosengarten. Like the rest of the class, they got very, very little from. And I don't know if those two are. I think Wiggins came on strong, and Rosengarten's going to be either the left or right tackle, depending on Stanley. And those positions don't grow on trees, but it's 2 guys. I mean. It's good. I just don't know they'll be this high on my list.
And then speaking of corners, TJ Tampa's an interesting one to look at going forward. That one's not finished being written as well. So I think we're going to have to check back in on the Ravens, but it doesn't blow me away compared to some of the other classes on the list. And
agreed.
Even the next class, and it's hard when your first rounder doesn't play a lot, but the Green Bay Packers, who come in at number 10, Jordan Morgan, got 1 start, played in 6 games as a rookie, but man, they found a guy in Edgerrin Cooper, linebacker, in round 2. Javon Bullard's a player as well. And so,
that's kind of about it, though.
Yeah, I'll take their second round over their first round, and I'll take their second round over their 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th rounds as well.
Yeah, it's kind of like the quorum thing, too. You'd think you take a running back on day 2, he should play a bunch. We got nothing from Lloyd. Cooper might be a star, but this rest of this class isn't overwhelming.
Yeah, and it's again, it's a good lesson. Like we're going to see a lot more. The Broncos at 11 had 1 contributor, right?
It was quarterback.
Quarterback, so it's important. But they're a top half of the league class just because they got a quarterback that might not even be a top. Who's definitely not a top 2. He's the 3rd best quarterback in his own division, let alone looking at the rest of the AFC. I think Troy Franklin is interesting. He came on at the end of the season. Devon Vele kind of came on earlier in the season as a rookie. He's an older rookie, the 7th round pick. So they got some contributors at wide receiver to go with Bo Nix, but they also had a lot of snaps available for wide receiver, which is probably why, and not a lot else from that rookie class.
Yeah, this is kind of where it dawned on me where, like you're like 9th, 10th, 11th best class. And it's like, okay. I mean, I don't remember a lot of these guys making much of an impact, but it just shows that the rookie classes don't come in and, overwhelm things right away. Knicks and all the quarterbacks are a little bit harder to rank because obviously you're happy you have them and, but what they did as rookies, Caleb Williams as well.
Let's go to number 12 because you're gonna have some thoughts on this. And would you agree with me that I'd probably take this Pittsburgh Steeler class over the
last couple we mentioned?
Yeah, over the Packers, over the Ravens for sure. This probably is a top 10 class just because you got multiple starting offensive linemen and some other possible contributors. But you get Fautanu, who's looking like, and you can tell me what the scouting report on his so far as a rookie, because obviously there was an injury there with Fautanu, so we didn't get to see a full season of that. But Zach Frazier, I mean, long-term starting center, it looks like, for the Pittsburgh Steelers there. And then you got Mason McCormick, who was the small school interior offensive lineman as well on day 3.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of a strange class because, 3 of their top 5 picks were O linemen. 2 of them look like long-term starters, Frazier and McCormick. Peyton Wilson, the linebacker, really flashed and is going to get more of a role. He looks like a keeper for sure. But 4 of your draft picks basically got injured and did nothing in their rookie year, including your first-round pick. And Roman Wilson's the other one. Logan Lee, Ryan Watts. So we keep talking about the Steelers show. It's like Steelers are going to bring in the draft class, and then they're going to bring these 4 back that are almost like rookies as well. But I will tell you, Fautanu looked great pre-injury.
Yeah, that was what I was going to ask. Like, what?
Yeah.
He was going to be he's
the left-right thing we don't know yet with Broderick Jones. I mean, it's not set in stone. Who knows? He was playing right, and then he got hurt when he got hurt.
That's one of the weirder things that the Steelers are doing, to be honest, with the flip-flop thing.
Yeah,
and here's another one. I mean, it's a 1-player class so far, aside from, if you want to count kicker in round 6. But
yeah, it's a good one, but 1 player
class Jacksonville Jaguars. They hit a home run in round 1, number 23 overall, with Brian Thomas Jr., who looks awesome. Mason Smith,
only one guy.
Pick, a few starts in there and got some playing time. We'll see with guys like Javon Foster and Jordan Jefferson. And but man, home run in round 1 for sure. And again, like you are a top half of the league rookie class if you just got one dude. With your first round pick. And so that might be all they got. Yeah. By the look of these guys are not going to be contributors very much in the NFL period. So that's the biggest lesson here is like, if you're hitting on 50% of your picks, like you're ahead of the game. And if you get a star player early, it's an awesome draft already. Yeah, this is kind of an eye-opening exercise. Like, wait, that's an above average draft class, and they had 1 star, but the rest of the class, I don't know what they did in those rookies in Jacksonville. And if you're projecting classes, the next one, number 15, Chicago Bears, Caleb Williams, Romo Dunze, Kieran Omegaji, who was a high-level traits, raw. Mm-hmm. You knew he wasn't going to be and injured. You knew he wasn't going to be a player early in his career, but you might have a starting left tackle on you in year 40.
Yeah. And for another day.
This is like a boomer bust. You're either going to have an amazing draft class, like the Bears aren't going to be 15. We're going to look back on this and be like, oh, they blew it and it's a terrible class, or it's an amazing draft class.
But they also had 2 picks in the top 9.
Right.
That helps. Yeah, right.
Either you completely blew it because you had the high picks and you had the number 1 pick, and other quarterbacks are better than your quarterback that you drafted number 1, or you got that number 1 quarterback and you got a number 1 wide receiver and maybe even a starting offensive tackle,
right?
Even though you only had 5 picks.
Now you're cooking, right? Again, I mean, I don't have a lot to add to that, but that's a lot to be determined. But they're pretty happy with their guys, I would think.
All right, real quick, take a peek at the bottom of the list here, and number 32 is the Cleveland Browns, and part of that again,
miserable, man.
They didn't pick until 54, and and this is what you look at with the Browns. It's like, man, Myles Garrett wants out now. If Myles Garrett wants out, then other veteran players are going to want out. And you made your bed, so you got to lie on it. So if you are the Browns, you got to fire the people, unless it's ownership, which it might be. You got to fire the people that made the move to bring in Deshaun Watson, because not only is the Watson thing bad, but it didn't allow you to get other talent on your roster, and is going to create a void there. And then you draft a project, a player with like some off-field stuff, with Michael Hall Jr. in round 2. You didn't really even get any contributors beyond that either.
Yeah, and Hall was the 54th pick overall, and that's the earliest they've picked since the Watson trade. I mean, that's 3 years in a row without high picks. And I mean, it's a hard way to live. They're going to pay for it heavily.
We just went through a bunch of teams that drafted pretty darn good players in that same zone in round 2. So it's not like you could. True. It wasn't like you were hamstrung and you couldn't find a big time player. And we'll see what Hall ends up being. We'll see if Zinter, is a long-term player for them on the interior, and they could use it on that offensive line. And then, man, not a lot of else from that rookie class.
No.
31 is the Minnesota Vikings. And this is just tough because, again, this is a class that I would say is a very low likelihood of being a bottom tier draft class, but you didn't get anything from you had 2 first rounders, and then you didn't have any day 2 picks because you're trading up. JJ McCarthy got hurt before the season started, and then Dallas Turner was just a backup player as a developmental speed rusher.
And as a result, you have no day 2 picks for this upcoming draft.
Right.
So
you better hit on those guys.
Turner's the one that's concerning. McCarthy, you could say, okay, that wasn't our fault. We'll see. But Turner gave you nothing.
Buffalo Bills, number 30, Keon Coleman.
They got horrible
starts, and Dwayne Carter, defensive tackle. Ray Davis looked like an okay backup running back in round 4. They had a whole bunch of day 3 picks that really didn't see the field too much there. And you're hoping you got a guy in Keon Coleman, because that's going to be the buoy of this class.
Mm-hmm. And Bishop, we knew, was a bit of a project. He was a good tester. They need safety help, but it's okay. I don't think it's miserable.
As far as contributors, the Chiefs got 1. They're the 29 class. They got a lot of starts from Xavier Worthy. Was he worthy of trading up in the first round? He's got a lot of speed. Loves what I saw from the Super Bowl, actually. So he can take that momentum, I think, into year 2 and be a guy. But the big one here was the swing at offensive tackle, who started early in the season, was not ready to go. We knew he was raw. Kingsley Suamataia, what is he going to be for them in the future? Is he going to be a starting caliber player, or is he just going to be a big bust? There's a lot of traits there still with the young guy who was only 20 years old when he was drafted, by the way. And then Jared Wiley, could he potentially replace Travis Kelce at tight end? So again, this class not
for another day, with the exception of Worthy, but
not a lot of.
They got to be happy with Worthy though.
Detroit Lions and Carolina Panthers round out the bottom 5. I might put the Carolina Panthers at 32 because Xavier Legette might be a guy late in round 1, but they drafted a running back with an ACL in round 2. Then he comes back very end of the season. By the way,
he might not play this upcoming year.
Yeah, he tore his ACL again at the end of the year. He might
never really play, right?
That might be it. You know, he might have just lit it for
kind of like Jatavian Sanders, but right. I mean,
yeah, Jatavian Sanders got some run at tight end. Shao Smith-Wade as a nickel.
But I like Jalen Coker. You're noticeable free agent signings.
Yes.
At least give him some credit on that one.
Coker might have been their best rookie, and he was
right. He was better than Legette.
All right, there you go. What do you guys think about the 2024 class? Did NFL.com get it right for the top and the bottom of their rankings? Of course, we're going to focus a lot here on 2025, but it's important to look back and learn from history. Get your questions in at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL for this week's pre-combine mailbag. And drop a comment on YouTube. Subscribe while you're there. Matt and I back tomorrow right here. Peacock and Williamson.